start a little earlier. I'm going to go through and do these, so if you want to watch again, if not. So ionic compounds, um, with everything, I personally would look for transition metal, transition metal, transition metal, things that need Roman numerals first. I would do those, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to go through and do them all. ZnS is zinc sulfide, magnesium chloride, oh, polyatomic ion, that's chlorate, so calcium sulfate. Silver is like zinc, doesn't need a Roman numeral. Oh, not A. Let's not use the Latin word. Silver nitrate. Rhodium is a transition metal. So this is oxide. Oxide is -2. There's two of them. Two negative 2s are -4. So that means this must be +4. Calcium oxide. That's carbonate. Cobalt is a transition metal. Carbonate is -2, so the positive charge is +2 spread out over 2, means each one is +1. Magnesium and PO4 is phosphate. Potassium chloride. Kind of like salt, but not really. K2O is potassium oxide. AlNO2 is aluminum nitrite. Magnesium oxide. Tin isn't a transition metal, but it's one that needs a polyatomic ion. This would be tin 1 iodide. Niobium, I think it's under vanadium. Chloride is -1. 5 of them means niobium 5. Copper, SO3 is sulfite. Sulfite is -2. There's one of those, one copper, so that's copper 2. Zirconium is underneath of titanium. Arsenide. Arsenide is -3, so that's zirconium 3. Iron and sulfate. Sulfate, not sulfate. Sulfate is -2, so the iron is +2. This is tin again. And chloride. This is 4, because chloride is -1. Ooh, go way down to the bottom. Actin, actinium, chloride, actinium 3, CHLO, chloride, KCN, potassium, really bad ium, cyanide, NH4OH, ammonium hydroxide, FeClO4. This is an interesting one because chlorate is ClO3. It's -1. There's 3 of them, so it's +3. But ClO4, adding an oxygen, makes this perchlorate. Rubidium. Rubidium is in group 1A, doesn't need a Roman numeral. Manganese sulfide. -2 twice is -4, so +4. So there are those formulas. If I were doing this systematically, I would go through and do all of the ones with Roman numerals. But I've got a little bit of an advantage. I'm just going to check to see if anyone started our meeting. Oh, oh dear. Hey, I just started recording already, so I could go through and do the answers so we don't have to spend all sorts of time on that. We can do something else quick. NaCl, sodium chloride, tin is +4, nitrate is -1. Let's put the right number there. Potassium sulfide, copper 2 oxide is CuO. I got somebody here. I have just been recording myself doing the answers to the left side of 3, and now I'm on 4, so I'm going to finish this up before we really get going. We'll go back and look at them. Mercury is 2, so I need 3 of those. 2. Magnesium is +2. Hydroxide is -1. Aluminum sulfate. Another 2-3 thing. Iron carbonate, another 2-3 thing. Beryllium nitrate, beryllium is +2. Nitrate is -1. Ammonium sulfate. Nickel 2 sulfide is NiS. Hg3N2. K2SO4. Oh. Sodium oxide. MgCO3. KBr. PB. Wow, that was loud. PB. Lead 3 phosphate. Cobalt oxide. Manganese, not magnesium. 3P2. Iron sulfide. Whew. Ammonium carbonate. Kate. Ag. Oh, if only we had spelled Kate with a C. All right, let's see who's here now. Holy smokes, all sorts of people. Good day. Hello.
Hello.
I started early because the goal was to try to go through and do all of the answers for 3 and 4 so we didn't have to waste time because I realized today it's like holy smokes, we've only got 7 weeks. So we've got to kind of pick things up, but we've got 1, 2 and a mixture of naming to do. So I went through and did and will upload, I hope, when we're done. That's the answers to practice number 3. Hopefully they're legible, but again, I was trying to do things quickly. In a minute, I'll check to see because there's only 7 people. Normally we pick up a couple. And practice number 4, the answers are there as well. I don't know. This probably makes things slightly worse, harder to see. Would help if I did that. But it's all based on charge, and I kind of talked through some of them. Mercury 2 phosphate. Phosphate I know is -3. So -3, +2, 3 2s and 2 3s. Does anyone who's here now have any questions about any of those? Because naming molecular compounds takes like 10 minutes and we can get that done today. We can look at acids and then everything with naming next, like finish naming next week, talk about moles, and then do balanced equations and then do stoichiometry and maybe concentration quickly. I don't know, depends on times and whatnot. And here's hoping there's not a lot of noise upstairs. We haven't added anybody in a couple minutes, so maybe I will remind some of you. I think there's an assignment up there for naming ionic compounds, which after we have all of those done, should be all right. Did I put that up there yesterday? Yeah. What? Somebody's got it turned in already. Hopefully everything's good. So are there any questions on those ones before we carry on to molecular compounds? Like if there's any that kind of stand
Do you
out.
have a page that's due today?
Yeah?
Do we have to do both pages?
You mean like all 4 pages that are in the file?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just the first 2. That's just me.
Okay, I did that.
If you look at this it was I didn't even notice, and I should have just edited it, but like there's
Yeah, I did the first 10.
yeah, just do the first 10. I just at some point decided to make a duplicate. Like fundamentally, it's a whole bunch of
Exact
it's
same stuff.
similar. I just changed elements. So apparently, 1 year I was a little concerned about people copying and didn't tell them that there were differences, and I knew that I could tell the differences. I thought I was being smart and whatnot.
Sure.
So I'm gonna go back to here. We're up to 10. So I'll post those, and in the video I explained the beginnings of both of them. But oh, multiple emails. So excuse me. Zoom whole page. So we do ionic compounds. Ionic compounds are the salts that are positive and negative charged ions. Properties of those include things like most of them dissolve to some extent in water. When they dissolve in water, they conduct electricity. They have high melting and boiling points and things like that. Molecular compounds are all nonmetals. Instead of having this big infinite array of a crystal, we have discrete molecules. So it's got nothing to do with charges. We talked about those bondings. Most people, like if you've noticed, practice 1, 2, and 3 are all ionic compounds, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I think it's 5 and 6 are molecular, and they're somewhere in here. Oh, this is all discombobulated. Oh, that's all in there from last year because when I was sick. But molecular compounds, even if we were at school, would be like fire it off in like the lesson is 20 minutes because we don't worry about like there's no charges, there's nothing. The names and formulas tell you everything. So if it's this is assuming it's binary, if it's more than a binary or more than two elements, they get significantly more complicated, but you don't deal with that per se until you actually get further on in chemistry. You do some in organic chemistry. So in ionic compounds, you have to use charges. Molecular compounds, the name tells you the number, and then you use those prefixes in the name to tell you the number of elements. So the first thing we need to do is know the prefixes. Mono is 1. Di is 2. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. A tricycle has 3 sides. A tetrahedron has 4 faces. Then we get into a pentagon, a hexagon, a heptagon, an octagon. Whoop. And it's the same idea. Nona and deca. There are ones for the numbers after that, but you rarely see a molecule that is going to need these, and if you do, they're fairly specialized, and you're going to know, like, you will be doing that sort of chemistry. So, writing a name of one of these is the prefix and the name of the element. Then we have the second word is the second element with a prefix, one of those 10, the name, and then we tack "ide" on the end. So these are all going to end in "ide." Um, there's two exceptions, and these are important if we were doing these in class. Um, if you don't use these, I would take marks off. If it's the first element and there's only one, we generally there are some exceptions, but you generally don't say the name of the first. So like carbon dioxide is CO2. You don't call it monocarbon dioxide. It's just carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. The other one that's more specific is AO and OO. So the second letter being O, these are generally going to be oxides. So you're not going to have, oh, sorry, I forgot an A there. Tetraoxide, pentaoxide, hexa, hepta, octa, or like I've said, carbon monoxide, because we don't want to have monooxide. It's just, my guess is it's a language thing, but it's formally wrong. I's, so the tri and the di are fine because dioxide, and A's and I's because we have iodine. Just quickly thinking, I think that's arsenide. Well, I guess, oh no, arsenides would be okay. So apparently these, I think I split into that page. So the this is what I would do for um, these sorts of things. I just want to quickly so I can see what those are while we're doing those. So if we're writing the name, I've got nitrogen as my first thing. Let's get rid of, oh, you dummy. Nitrogen. Well, there's two of them. So this is dinitrogen. Next word, I've got oxide because O is at the end. There's one of them, dinitrogen monoxide. And that is the technical formal name of this. You've all probably heard the old-fashioned name, nitrous oxide or laughing gas. Um, that goes back to similar things like ferrous, ferric. It's an old-fashioned thing. It's technically about oxidation states, but we've simplified things in the last, I don't know, 40 years because this was how I would have named it. Um, because there was that. There's this one, NO2. Well, I've got nitrogen again, but there's one of them. But it's the first element, so, well, it's just nitrogen. That's oxide. There's two of them. Dioxide. This, you can, N2O, you can inhale. It makes you kind of giddy and euphoric and laugh and all that sort of stuff. Nitrogen dioxide is reddish. It's a pollutant. Um, it comes out like when you burn a fossil fuel, there's some nitrogen in there, and that's the byproduct of burning it. And in high enough concentrations, that's toxic and can be very bad. But I don't know why I'm wasting time on that. Cl2O7. Well, I've got chlorine first. Well, there's two of them. Dichlorine. There's oxide. 7. The prefix for 7 is hepta, but we don't want the A in there. So this is dichlorine heptoxide. We've talked about that one before. Carbon is first. Well, or analogs of this. Bromide. There's 4 of them. Tetrabromide. I don't think I've ever seen that one. I don't know if it would be carcinogenic like carbon tetrachloride, but well, this one should be painfully obvious now. Why it's Carbon. And the last one I throw in there for a reason, because if I ask this in class, everyone's kind of following along, and most people say, and I say, you do that on a test, I do this, because what type of an element is barium? But a metal. So a metal, you don't use a prefix. That's a precursor to, well, fundamentally, when we do this, you need to be able to get a whole list of things, and that's what the last 4 pages in this naming compounds things are, which is just a plethora of stuff. The ultimate goal is, can I go through a list and say, okay, da da da, those are molecular, that's a metal, so this is just barium chloride. So that's naming. Um, it is as simple as you think. If you're doing practice, just make sure you have that in front of you if you don't remember them. Um, and like that is naming. The only one that people sometimes mix up, because di means two. Well, bi means two as well, but we're not talking about carbon, excuse me, bioxide. A bicycle has two. I found out recently. Dilemma is a choice. Typically between the root of the word is two things, which I had never thought of before. Writing formulas, even easier. Well, diphosphorus. So that means I've got P2. Pent means I'm going to have 5. Oxide, P2O5. Iodine, well, I've got tetraiodine, so that's that. Non-oxide means it's an O and a 9. Whether any of these, well, that one you can buy in a bottle, that one you can buy in a bottle or cylinder. Whether that works, I have no idea. It's just the process. No prefix. Sulfur, fluoride, hexa means 6. Nitrogen, 1. Oxide, trioxide. Carbon tetrahydride, CH4. That's also called, if any of you, well, when all of you take chemistry 12, you'll learn that CH4 is methane. Phosphorus trifluoride is PF3. And then I do the same thing. Aluminum chloride, well, there's no prefixes, so it's just that. That's a metal. It's +3. So this is technically AlCl3. That's kind of the aside sort of one. And that's molecular compounds in a, well, it was on for, where'd that go? 10 minutes before. That's what we need to know how to do. So if I go to here, so we did 1, we did 2, we did 3, we did 4. I really need to edit that. Practice number 5 and practice number 6 are fundamentally identical. So whether you do the left-hand side of one or of both or just all of one, some people like this is one that in a classroom we would, if we started the day with that 2 pages of notes, do practice 5 and 6, and if you do your work, everyone walks out the door with most of it done. So that is those ones. Which are somewhere down. I don't know where they are. There's all sorts of random stuff because of my gallbladder last year, so I've got to go through that. And we're going to talk about acids, which will be a day, and then strategies for the mixtures, and how much of that you do is kind of up to you. Because my on a test for chapter 9, because it's about naming, there's would typically be multiple choice questions, and I might take the questions from the test and make that an assignment, because for naming, well, I think it's 3 ionic formulas and 3 names to do, 3 molecular formulas, 3 names to do, 2 acids, names and formulas, and then here's 10 or 12 that's a mixture, because that's what we need to do on a test. Well, you don't have anything like the periodic table. Now you can go through and do all sorts of stuff, but that's that's all there is to naming molecular compounds. I can't, unless we want to get into much crazier things. So I'm going to say, just for fun, that's all sorts of old stuff. Well, that's apparently someday I did a quiz on Thursday, April 12th. So where's my eraser? Actually, I did leave a bunch of stuff out of one chapter. Let's, I turned that off. That's why. Do, 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 do. 5 or 6, your choice. It's the same number of things. Just try one of them. Hopefully it doesn't take any more than 10 or 15 minutes. I probably wouldn't go over the answers to those. I mean, I might just post them. I don't know where. Stupid computer. It's 5.6. I don't know where those ones came from. I could put them in and let you try them. But yeah, it's everything. Ryan asked about that assignment. If you have all sorts of work to do and whatnot, and you can't get the assignment in today, double check and make sure I did it for math. You can pass it in late. I'm not super worried about, oh my gosh, it has to be in today because, well, if you're one of these people who are working 45 hours, well,
That would suck.
cash money, allow late
Oh
turn.
yeah.
Um, but if you're working a whole pile and trying to keep up on stuff and whatnot, it takes a little bit longer, whatever. As long as it's done, and I've gone through a couple of them and I'll try to start giving feedback. Normally there's 10 questions, so I'll probably go through, well, question one is like, I'm only going to tell you where there are mistakes. So if all of a sudden you have all the way down and the first comment I make is question number 4, the structure is wrong, or there's the shape is wrong. Well, that means you've done 1, 2, and 3 correctly. So that's kind of that. I don't have a lot more to say unless anybody has any questions. It was kind of fast and furious, but I don't want to keep you all day. It's actually nice and half warm, so hopefully you can get outside and enjoy the nice day and whatnot and have a good weekend. Anybody have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Even though you probably can't see me because of the stupid glare, I might have to change that.
I'm alright.
Perfect. I guess have a good weekend, and we'll talk to all of you on Monday.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good weekend.